12 years, Across the Nations have been travelling the globe, carrying a cross and a message of love and hope. They've seen God do the impossible and change the lives of countless people. People think that miracles are just a work of fiction, but it's time now for people to hear the truth. It's time for people to hear the story of Across the Nations.
Hello, welcome to the first of a series of discussions about all things Across the Nations, the stories, the journey and whatever happens in between. So without further ado, let me introduce the men from Across the Nations, Mike Vickers and Alan Saunders.
Good morning.
Good morning, Graham. It's really great to be here today.
Yes, good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Mike. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in real life.
It's nice to see you've got your uniform on, Alan. It's good for everyone to know that this is how you dress at home when you're with your family.
Well, to be honest, I didn't want to disappoint anyone, so I slept in this overnight.
So, as you can see, ladies and gents, this is probably how the discussion's going to go on. But like I say, it's great to be chatting with them both this morning, and really we want to talk about Across the Nations and about the journey that these guys have been on. Maybe you know about it, maybe you don't. But rather than me tell you about that journey, I figured that I'd hand over to Mike and Alan and just say, well, where did all this begin? How did Across the Nations even start?
Okay, well, back in 2008, really. Up until 2008, for about 18, 19 years, I've been pastoring churches ever since I left Bible college. And 2008, God put it in my heart to walk the whole of Britain, starting right at the top, near John O'Groats, but just a bit west of John O'Groats, in a place called Thurso. And I walked down through Britain to the south coast of England, Brighton. But I was carrying, on this occasion, not a cross, but a flag. My church had a flag that we used for intercession and various other things. It wasn't a kind of a silky little flag that flew in worship or anything like that. It was a very military-looking flag. It was a 6-foot flag on an 8-foot pole, red crimson for the blood of Jesus, and on the red backdrop of the flag was a golden crown representing the majesty, the rule and reign of Jesus Christ. So the flag really represented the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. It was called the Crown Flag. It's the proper name for it, and there's a website called crownflag.com, which you can go to and have a look at the vision behind the flag and how it all came about, the ministry of it today. But we had a copy of that flag, and so God put it in my heart to walk right the way through Britain carrying that flag and to announce to the church that your God reigns, and announce to the world, really, that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of God is near. And so I did that. I walked, in the end, it was over 1,000 miles, about 1,011 miles. I didn't walk straight down as the crow flies, but I kind of went from city to city, zigzagged around a bit as I walked down. But the life-changing, if I can put it like that, experience was that God would have me arrive in individuals' lives at a time that only God could have planned. If I can give you a quick story, would that be all right, Graham? Just a quick story of that. So I was walking through Scotland. It's quite interesting walking through some of the areas of Scotland with a crown on a flag. I remember some guys, they saw me walking with this big flag with a crown on it, and they shouted out, "Is that about the Queen, mate? Is that about the Queen?" And it was quite intimidating. I remember the way they was saying it, and I shouted back, "No, actually, it's about the King." And just for a brief moment, they were scratching their heads and looking confused, and just enough time for me to get away, actually. Back to the story, I was walking through Edinburgh, and I was passing by a car showrooms, and one of the staff members come running out when he saw me, and he looked a bit shocked as well, and he asked, "What's the flag about? What's the flag about, mate?" So I said, "Well, it represents the kingdom of God and of his son, Jesus Christ." And as soon as I said that, he kind of he went, "Oh no, you're kidding me." So he invited me in, and so I went inside and sat on a leather suite just inside the window of the car showrooms, and he got me a Coke from the vendor, and we sat down, and he told me why he was so shocked to see me come past. And apparently, just a moment before I came past, he explained that they had this member of staff just transferred them to their branch, and he's one of these born-again Christians, he told me. He said, and ever since he's been here, he's been preaching at us and talking about God all the time and driving everybody mad. And he said, just before you came along, he said, we were at it again. He was talking about God, and it was just the wrong time. And I got angry with him. And I said to him, look, mate, I don't want to hear about God anymore. And anyway, if there's a God in heaven, why doesn't he give us a sign? I want a sign right now if there's a God. He said, and as I said it, I looked out the window, and you were walking past with this big red flag. He said, and I come running out. I had to know, what? He said, something in me just made me think, what?
Well,
and so it was really, really interesting, really funny that I pitched up just at that moment. And really, we had a chat, and it was a great conversation, and I told him some of the things that had happened to me while I was walking down. An 11-year-old girl got healed. She was deaf in both ears, with hearing aids in both ears, and God sufficiently restored her hearing that her mum put both hearing aids in her handbag as they walked off together afterwards, which was probably the first time I've ever seen anybody deaf healed miraculously like that. So it was an encounter, it was an impact on my life, but also I was sharing with him about some of the things that had happened. And after about half an hour of a chat with him, it was obvious he was questioning, and he was interested, and he was, by his own admission, he was no longer an atheist.
Yeah.
So I walked off down the road thinking, wow, that was an interesting, amazing opportunity there. So it was like that. The whole of the journey was like that. I was arriving at these moments in people's lives where they were asking a question about, a deep question about life, about their own mortality or something. And I would just arrive with this crazy guy with a big red flag would just all of a sudden arrive on the scene to answer a question or to be there to help them. So quite amazing, really.
I remember when you told that story a few years back, and I remember listening to it and just thinking it sounds like a film. It doesn't sound real. It sounds like something you'd see on a TV show now about an amazing coincidence. And, if it's just one time, then you can sort of get away with saying it's a coincidence. But you're saying that pretty much happened like the whole way. And there was just...
I'd been a pastor up until that time. I knew during walking through the country that I was not going to return back to the role that I've been playing in church life for many years. But I wrote down in my journal during that walk 1,500 entries of a one-to-one opportunity to share the hope that I've got within me with people along the way. 1,500 individual opportunities to share my faith with people. And that's not just a quick one-liner with somebody and then walk on. That's a proper, whether it's a sit down outside a bar, whether it's a natter at a bus stop while people are waiting for a bus, or some other situation where someone's invited me into their home and made me a sandwich because they've seen that I'm walking through the country. Whatever the situation, you know, I have 1,500 opportunities, which absolutely transformed my life for good.
So I mean, like you've walked with a flag. You've walked from one end of the country to the other with a flag. You get back, and the next time you do it, you decide to take a cross instead. So what happened in between? What made you go from a flag to a cross?
Yeah, so 2008, it was June. I think I started in June, finished in August. It was about 2.5 months. I was away from home, walking through the country. And then the following Easter time, I kind of felt, you know, I walked north to south. It'd be good to walk east to west. So Easter time, the following year, 2009, I walked from Great Yarmouth to St David's. But because it was Easter, I sort of walked with a 12-foot wooden cross based on, you know, modelled on Arthur Blessett's cross with a little wheel pneumatic tyre on the end. Across, 12 foot by 6 foot, weighs, back then it weighed about 58, nearly 60 pound in weight. And we've modified it slightly. We've got it down to sort of, 20 kilos. A bit lighter now, but so walked east to west. And again, same things were happening. Just lots and lots of opportunities, people stopping me, asking me why I'm doing it, at a time when they were seeking answers to things themselves. But back in the day, back then, I had a motorhome, a driver and a motorhome who went about 20 miles in front of me each time, and I caught up with him by the end of the day. But that's where I would sleep. So I had a provision, I had somewhere to sleep each night back then. And sometimes also a team came with me as well. I think, Graham, if I'm right in saying, when I did the East to West, you came for 2 or 3 days with your rugby player friend and joined me. And if I remember rightly, it impacted his life as well, didn't it?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it was it. I remember, like, the whole idea sounds insane, doesn't it? You know, carrying a 12-foot wooden cross across the country. But it was, me and my friend thought, it'd be a bit of a laugh at least, and a bit of a, just a bit of a physical exercise. And we turned up, and it's just, I remember the first time that I ever carried the cross, and just being overwhelmed with thinking, man, like Jesus didn't, Jesus did this, but obviously in a lot of different circumstances, tougher, because you're walking through the streets and you've got people looking at you like you're a proper weirdo. And you sort of get just a little small kind of insight into what Jesus actually went through, leading up to the cross and stuff. And I remember me and my friend were just massively touched by that, and the fact, and how many people you do get to speak to and stuff. Even I say I went with you on that crosswalk, but I really did spend most of my time in that motorhome. I think, like, if I remember rightly.
Well, I wasn't going to mention that bit, Graham, but that's very humble of you.
But I remember that being a really powerful time. But I mean, you did the crosswalk then with like provision and stuff, didn't you? And you did it like going in. You had things planned and set up, and you had the motorhome to fall back on. But you do it a very different way now. When did that change? How did that change?
Yeah, so between that particular crosswalk at Easter 2009 and the next one in July, which was going to be walking across Ireland, God spoke to me. I was out walking, praying, and just seeking God really about whether this was going to be a ministry now rather than just doing these 2 isolated walks. And God spoke to me through Luke chapter 10, when Jesus chose 70 or so and sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every place and city where he himself was about to go. And, the story goes on, and Jesus said, I send you out like lambs amongst wolves. And he says, don't take money bags and extra clothing and all this other stuff. And so reading that, it was like God was saying to me, Mike, preach the kingdom, pray for the sick, cast out the devils. But this will only be successful if you allow me to provide for you while you do it. And I realized then that the deal was that God wanted me to take no wallet, no provision, no plastic, and not to prearrange everything, but to allow God to not only show up and direct, but to provide as well while I was actually on the walks. So this was a first for me. A couple of guys from my church took me out over to Ireland, Galway on the west coast, to a church there. We stayed there for the weekend. I ministered at the church, and then they went back, took my wallet and my credit cards and everything home to give to Sarah. On that,
they were just dropped in it.
Yeah. So the pastor thought it was hilarious. Because when I told him that I was going to be walking with no money or wallet or plastic or anything, he thought that I was kind of semi-serious and that there would be some other means of provision. So he thought it was really funny. So when we kind of like went our separate ways, because he walked with me for the first mile, walking me out of Galway, and I was going to be walking Belfast direction, northeast, and then over to Bangor, finishing on Bangor. So it's 21 days the walk was in total. But when the pastor on the first day of the walk left me, he was like looking at me thinking, what's he going to do? What's going to happen to him? And I have to be honest with you, I knew I'd heard God. I knew that God had told me to do it this way. But there's always that kind of in the back of your mind, what's going to happen? What if?
Yeah.
So anyway, I set off, said goodbye to him, carried on walking. And, I think the adrenaline was flowing through me, as well as, as well as I felt God's presence and his closeness at the time. But there was an adrenaline flowing through me, and I was walking really fast, too fast, ridiculously fast. But because there was no motorhome to carry my gear, and I had everything on me, everything that I had, I was carrying, including about 1,500 gospel tracts. Wow. Which is ridiculous when you think about it. Yeah. I'm carrying 1,500 gospel tracts. I'm carrying all my gear. I probably carried a little bit more provisional, in terms of, my private stuff, clothing and things like that. I probably carried a little bit more then than I do now, because I've streamlined it down even more. But
before this, you weren't like an avid walker or anything, really, were you?
No, not an athlete by any stretch of the imagination.
To go from sort of living in almost central London to now walking in the countrysides and you do some serious miles. I mean, when I walked with you, my friend who came, I can't vouch for myself, but I can certainly say my friend is in quite good shape, and he certainly was then, and we struggled to keep up with you. And so it's quite even that is a thing to behold when you're actually out there, because you do walk at a ridiculous pace.
Yeah, but yes, well, it's, I think it is the grace of God. Just before that particular walk, I was under investigations at the hospital for arthritis in my spine and in my shoulder. It was actually, it was diagnosed that I had osteoarthritis. But on the day that I stepped out with the cross, the first day I started walking with the cross, all the pain left me. I had no pain and no problems at all in my joints or in my back at all from that moment on. So on that day when I'd said goodbye to the pastor in Galway, and I was walking out of the town across northeasterly direction, I had no accommodation plan that night. I didn't know where I was going to be staying. I had no money. And so I'd walked about 16 miles at a really fast pace.
That's a lot.
My feet were on fire. I'm carrying excess weight. And I'm thinking, if I get blisters now, that could be game over. But I could already feel like something was going on underneath my feet. So I thought I better stop. So I stopped. I'm like in the middle of nowhere. It's all open fields. You can't see a house in sight. They're just two loose brick walls either side of the narrow road I was on. So I thought, right, well,
you got no shelter at all. Nothing.
No shelter. It was a fairly nice day, summertime. But I sat there. But it is Ireland, of course. But I sat down against one of these walls by the side of the road, and I was there. And I thought, if I can just maybe have a nap, and then take it, after I feel a bit rested, I'll carry on. But I was only sat there for about half an hour, and a little tow truck pulls up, and two, fellas jump out. I'm not going to attempt the Irish accent because Alan will mock me severely.
Yeah, we might lose the Irish viewers that we've got.
Yeah. But these were two, really funny guys, broad accents that got out. They said, "So what you doing there then with the cross?" And I told them that I was walking through their lovely country and telling people about Jesus as I was walking. And they said, "So where are you sleeping tonight?" I said, "Well, I've got nowhere planned at the moment, but I'm going to see what God opens up for me as I walk." So they looked at each other, kind of a funny expression, and they said, "Well, we can't leave you here." So the older one sent the younger one back with the truck to get their trailer, because they were looking at the cross. They had no idea that it came apart, but they were thinking, how are we going to get that on the back of this little truck? So he went back, got the trailer, came back, and they put the cross on the trailer. I got in the truck with them. I had no idea where I was going or why I was even getting in the truck with them. But they drove to this really lovely, actually, big house, B&B. And I didn't tell them that I didn't have money or wallet or anything like that, and they didn't ask. And so we pulled up outside this B&B. Lady came out. She saw the cross on the truck, thinking, "What is going on here?" And then we're there. And so she says, "Well, what's happening? What's happening?" she said. And before I could even answer her, one of the guys sort of started answering for me. And he's telling her what he thought I was doing, which sounded interesting, but not quite right, but interesting. I thought that would do. And she said, "Well, okay then." She said, "You better come in then." So we put the cross around the back of the house, lent it around the back against the wall, and the two fellas jumped in their truck and left me there. And I'm...
So now I'm random B&B in Ireland. You don't know who you are. You don't know who this lady is.
No. So anyway, she shows me in, shows me the room. The room's lovely, beautiful room, ensuite, all the best stuff. And she says to me, "What time would you like your breakfast in the morning?" And I'd kind of already decided that I'm going to start fairly early every morning. So I said, "Would 7 be okay?" She said, "That's perfect for us." So anyway, that night I'm thinking, what, do I tell her? Yeah. What do I tell her that, that I've not got any provision, money or anything? I thought, well, that's not really the deal. And I'd already decided that I wasn't going to tell people that I didn't have money, and I wasn't going to ask for collect donations or anything. And if people said, "Are you collecting for anything?" I'd always say no. So that was pretty much the principle I was working with. So I walked down to the kitchen where the breakfast was being given out, and I sat at the table, and lady came out. She said, "Would you like a full Irish breakfast?" I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." She, it was really lovely, and I ordered more toast, and I ate everything. And I thought, if she's going to call the Garda, the police, then I'm going to give her a good reason to call it.
Yeah, that's
so I'm having eaten everything. So as I was enjoying the breakfast, big guy come down the stairs past me, went out into the kitchen. Turns out he was the husband. And after a few minutes of chatting to his wife in the kitchen, he came in and he started speaking to me. He says, "Mike, isn't it?" He said, "I've just been talking to the wife about what you're doing." He said, "I think it's amazing." He said, "I just saw your cross, round the back of the house. He said, and you're carrying that all the way to Belfast? I said, well, yeah. He said, that's quite incredible. Anyway, so he grabbed his breakfast himself and he sat opposite me, and we had a little bit of a natter, and it wasn't long before he opened up to tell me that he was undergoing tests himself for some serious, probably a serious sickness, disease. And he was really worried, obviously, about it. So I was telling him some of the stories of just, you know, when I prayed for people along the way, and I prayed for people to be healed. And I sort of just began to build up his faith, really. And he said to me, you know, would you pray for me? I said, of course. And so he said, I tell you what, he said, let's go into the kitchen. Let's get the wife involved. So we went into the kitchen. The wife turned around. He told her a little bit about what I told him. And then the next minute I know we're holding hands in his kitchen. And, you know, there's eggs and bacon and the fat popping in the frying pan. And we're holding hands in the kitchen. And I'm just praying that the presence of God and the love of God will come and touch this couple. And he starts crying, big 6'2", 3" guy. He starts crying. His wife gets emotional. I'm praying that it'd be healed. Anyway, just quite phenomenal, right? But to cut a long story short, he gives his life to the Lord.
Wow.
She's really, like, you know, interested as well. But before I leave the B&B, he said to me, Mike, obviously he said, I just want you to know. He said, you know, the breakfast, the room, everything. He said, it's on us. Goes without saying. So I kind of like wiped my brow, you know. You know, that was day one. That was day one of me learning about how this works, how God provides. And God set the bar so high, I was thinking, I've got 21 days of this.
As part of our premiere of releasing Cross the Nations, the TV series, we've not only released episode 1, but we've released episode 2 as well. So if you enjoyed what you've just been listening to and watching, then click on episode 2 and hopefully you enjoy that just as much.